So it's an idea that is gonna, again, promote the community, make it a place where people are going to get outside of their homes. I live in Hillcrest Glen right now, excuse me, and we don't have anything like that. There's a lot of people who talk about this idea that they'd like to have it, so that's kind of where it spurred from. This area, by the way, is about 90 by 200 roughly, so it's close to a half acre. Internal sidewalks. Instead of just having sidewalks that front on the houses, they work in between the houses and around the village green, so that no matter where you are on the site, you can walk to this green, you can walk to these shops. Montgomery County's talked about bringing the Montgomery County Trail through here in this area. We have the connection at the corner of Flowertown and Butler. So in some fashion, the trail will work either through this site or come by this site. The biggest thing that I think this job does is it has good aesthetics. There are rear-loaded garages, which is not common in a townhouse or a carriage house product, so that when you drive down the streets and all the houses face the main artery that goes around the site, these proposed drive D and proposed drive E are, I don't want to call them alleys, but they're like a back road where people will load into their garage. They're narrower, not to a public road width. We're assuming that these would, a portion, if not all, would be private, so there'd be an association that would take care of it. And parking. A lot of times with a townhouse job, there's not enough parking, and you end up with cars on the streets. I know that the residents at Hillcrest Glen, the association, has talked to the township about enforcing the no parking, and we're getting ready to come in for the dedication. And once that happens, I know they're hoping for township help on that, because people park in the street and you can't get through. And what you have here is there are 52 parking spaces that are not in the driveway, that are not in the garage, and are equally and evenly spread out around the community, so that no matter where you live, there are parking spots within 50 to 75 feet walking distance from your house, so that when your guests come over, there's space to park. The perimeter is going to have a combination low wall, low fence, landscaping detail, so that when you're coming down Butler Pike or Plymouth Road, again, when you're driving by it, it's really aesthetically pleasing. It's not going to be a buffer that's going to hide the community. It's going to be lower in scale, and it would look good. That's really about it. I won't bore you with too much information. I know you have a long agenda, but I wanted to bring everybody up to speed so you knew what was happening, when it comes in, what it's all about. And again, I'm available at any time if you want to connect on a one-on-one basis with any concerns or issues.
Any council members have any, or staff have any questions for Mr. Peo?
I think the last time you presented, I mentioned, to look into the environmental stuff. Have you looked into anything like that?
We've looked into some stuff.
Okay.
Some things worked out better than we had hoped, and other things aren't going to work out as well. One of the things that we're doing is with the stormwater retention, it's going to be a pond, so that you have the groundwater recharge and the air recharge, which is a big thing with DEP right now. The way the stormwater is going to flow out from the commercial area, it's going to be an over-the-ground flow. So, you're not going to have just hard pipe that's dumping off the site. We are currently looking into some things like solar energy and
Streetlights and stuff.
alternate fuels, LED street lights, things like that. Solar energy on a townhouse or a carriage house project is very, very, very difficult. The problem is you need a lot of room, and you need as much sunlight that's going to hit that solar panel. So, this is south. It might work for these 4 units here, but the rest of them, it's going to be very difficult to get the energy into the house. We had somebody look at it, and they said just really, solar energy for a house is really only viable when you're talking about a house on a single lot that's about an acre. But LED lights is something that we're definitely looking into, incorporating them into within the house and the outside of the house, especially in the streetlight area.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
It looks like that there's not much yard space for each of the townhouses, is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. It's a different concept. And one of the things with this village concept that was a big discussion with staff and council and various members of the township when we were working through the ordinance was a typical green space requirement that you find for a townhouse project or a single subdivision project doesn't work as well for this, because instead of having one road for a house, you end up with two. So that cuts back on backyard space, which is why I really focused a lot on trying to get this central green to work, because in looking at it and living in a townhouse and having a lot of friends that do, people want to go somewhere, and they'll have this space to do it. Now, that being said, with these designs, they are incorporated so that every house will have a deck, every house will have, its own landscaping in the front, and in the back, it gets a little bit tighter because you have your garages and your driveways. But what we did do, and it's in your sheet, what we tried to do was, because we didn't have a lot of room for, let's call it yard area.
Right.
Okay, and again, it's more of a function of the design concept. It's this one here.
Right.
What we did do is we are doing the landscaping plan not only to meet the ordinance, but so that as you come through the community, there's a landscaping concept. And if you look at, just for example, buildings 1 through 5, you'll see that in between buildings 1 and 2, there's a hedgerow from the front. 1 through 5 is here, sorry for the small print, there's a hedgerow there.
Right.
And then the next building over is a street tree, and then you have another street tree and another hedgerow. And this hedgerow, street tree concept of alternating will give you this consistent streetscape. I have some pictures that, if I can get your email address, I can email you some pictures of the idea that we're using.
Well, who's your target audience? Because if there's children, where are they going to play? I can see them playing in here, but then, I'm not sure how that can be maintained.
Pretty much across the board, we're finding that this product draws young professionals without kids.
Okay.
Now, I'll use myself as the example, and I just had this conversation in Whitpain, where we did a rezoning from a 55 and over project to just a regular straight market project. That when you're starting a family, these houses, they're gonna be about 2,000 feet. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and what they don't have is, they don't have some of those extra rooms you need for your kids when they're
For a
from-
growing family.
growing family, between 1 and 6 or 7 years old, and you're forced to have them down the basement where the parents don't want them down there. And we're finding that our buyers who bought in Hillcrest Glen, which was 102 units plus the 7 singles, were, I'm gonna say 90% young professionals. And then as their families have grown and they have 1 child and start talking about a second, they're moving out.
And it goes along with the low maintenance of the yards, too.
Exactly.
I have 2 questions. One, you're just looking to resubmit your plans because you're repositioning the layout of the property to accommodate a larger green space. Is that what I understand? Or?
Well, we submitted our plans for preliminary land development.
Okay.
As far on the zoning end of things, we're right in line with what we had talked about before. We just moved the stuff around.
This is the first submission.
Yeah, this is the first plan submission.
This is the first submission.
So when we go to conditional use, we're gonna be presenting a plan that we live by.
Okay. And the driveway size, would that accommodate two cars?
2 cars.
Okay, so you have 2 cars per driveway plus 50 extra parking spaces, is that what you're saying?
Well, there's a 2-car garage in the back.
Okay.
Plus 2 cars per driveway,
Okay.
plus the 54 cars. In fact, the exact number total is 190 parking spaces for 46 townhouses.
Okay.
And then the commercial has 120 parking spaces. It has a lot of parking.